What's up, everybody? Big Monday coming up here on GoJo Golic. The Patriots trying out another former linebacker at head coach, officially signing Mike Vrabel after a one-and-done campaign from Gerard Mayo. Can it work? We'll find out. And are the Philadelphia fans concerned about Jalen Hurts? Is Mike Tomlin's future in doubt in Pittsburgh? We're going to give you everything you need to know coming off a big wild card weekend in the NFL. And finally, the national championship set. Ohio State punched their ticket in dramatic fashion over the weekend. We'll tell you the one line you're going to hear all week long in the lead up to this game. Oh, and LeBron James is going to stop by. Let's start the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you this morning. Fun show coming up, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. And watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And make sure you're ready to go for today. Fun one coming up. Marshall Newhouse going to join us, as he always does. 11-year NFL veteran offensive lineman, Super Bowl champion in hour number 2. On a Monday to go over the weekend and to look ahead at Monday Night Football coming up here, the last of the wild card weekend games, as the Vikings and the Rams are going to play in Glendale, Arizona, displaced by the wildfires here in Los Angeles. And speaking of Los Angeles, LeBron James, 9 o'clock Eastern, going to join us to talk about the Lakers season, what they see for themselves going forward here. We did some picks with him over the weekend as well, Dad. So fun to get LeBron James in here at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. But this weekend was about the NFL. The wild card round, Dad, has now come and gone. And we've got most of the divisional round set up at this point now here. Kansas City's going to take on the Houston Texans. Buffalo and Baltimore, the battle for the MVP that's already been voted on, everybody. Don't actually think it matters. The Lions are going to face the Washington Commanders that get their first win in the postseason since 2006. And the Eagles will take on the winner of tonight's Vikings and Rams game. So, Dad, an exciting weekend overall here. I wonder for you, before we get to any of the specifics and Mic'd Up Monday or anything like that, if you had a big takeaway from Wild Card Weekend, with everything we saw, since we're not doing the super thing anymore, was there one thing that stuck out to you from over this weekend, seeing NFL football now kick off the postseason?
Yeah, a couple of, I'll give you the biggest thing, but seeing Houston kind of turn around from a mediocre season, winning a mediocre division and looking good in the playoffs. I thought a lot of people had the Chargers coming into Houston and beating Houston, but the Chargers took control, the Texans took control. Herbert throws 4 interceptions. Obviously, the game last night we're going to talk about was the closest game, with the last-second doink field goal by Zane Gonzalez for Washington. But I would say for both sides, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, Baltimore by far looked like the most dominant team. Now we have one more game tonight, so we can see. But Baltimore by far looked like the most dominant team. And now I think top to bottom, they and the Eagles have the best rosters. But you have to see in practical application on the field. And what Baltimore did to Pittsburgh was, and I got to call that game, and I'm fortunate enough I get to call Baltimore at Buffalo this Sunday, which should be a banger of a game. And you're right, all the MVP chanting out there. The voting's already done. It's already been decided.
Yes.
We'll see who wins that. But I thought Baltimore's domination on the ground was unbelievable, and their defense in stopping Pittsburgh, but it was the way both teams were going. Baltimore had won the last 4 of the season. Pittsburgh had lost the next 4. But, man, Mike, Pittsburgh just looked horrible, like they had the last 4 games of the season, like they had the last, 6 playoff games. Going into this playoff game, they had lost their last 5 playoff games and been outscored in the first quarter 66-0 in the previous 5 playoff games. In the last 4 games of the season, Pittsburgh had been outscored 40-3 in the first quarter. So notorious slow starts in both the playoffs and the end of the season. So it was about Baltimore being that good, but Pittsburgh just, man, I mean, absolutely getting dominated. So I would say it was obviously Pittsburgh getting dominated, but how good Baltimore looked running the ball with obviously with Derrick Henry and with Lamar Jackson and Lamar throwing the ball and then the defense. They were the most dominant team this weekend.
Yeah, it was a show of force on the ground for this Baltimore Ravens team. 50 carries for 299 yards and a 50% rushing success rate in this game, including their second drive. It was 13 plays, all 13 runs. It was one of the meanest things I've seen on an NFL football field in a while. Dad, you always talk about it. Being a D lineman and getting run up on like that, getting bullied out of your turf is one of the tougher ways to go out there. And Baltimore was able to do that to them all day long. We know Zay Flowers in that game, and they still went out there and put that on wax. And, Dad, that was the interesting part is Baltimore, we've had questions about them in the postseason, questions about them against the Steelers, and they sort of erased both of those in one moment there. We'll ask some bigger questions about Mike Tomlin's future, the Pittsburgh Steelers' trajectory as a franchise right now, as post-Ben Roethlisberger, it continues to look pretty listless for a team who measures their success based on the amount of Lombardis they put in the trophy case here. But you're right. Baltimore went out and looked the way we expected them to look in this game. I can't say the same for their counterpart on the other side, Dad. The Philadelphia Eagles was really interesting to me because that was a team. I went back and I watched that game twice, and Philadelphia's defensive line remains incredibly dominant. Nolan Smith had one of his best games, I thought, as an Eagle with the pressure he was able to get there. But going up against the Green Bay Packers team that was the walking wounded going into this game and was a triage unit by the end of this, basically all their best receivers out of that game, key defenders also missing from that one, multiple starting offensive linemen out by the end of that game. And for it to look as close as it was, as long as it was, and Jalen Hurts coming back off the concussion to, I guess, not be asked to do a ton in that game, it seemed pretty clear that the Eagles wanted to just take the air out of the ball the way they have all year and get out of there. But the margin of victory looked slimmer than I expected. And if I'm the Detroit Lions sitting at home right now, I'm jotting down notes wondering if this Eagles team is capable of going toe-to-toe in a scoring fest that Detroit's going to have to. That's how they're going to win games. But is the Philadelphia Eagles team that we're seeing right now capable of going score for score with them in a big game? I don't know. I'd feel pretty good sitting at home right now, even with all the injuries, if I was the Detroit Lions based on what I saw there and the amount of pressure I think that Green Bay group was able to get on the interior of the Eagles' offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I that's why I said on paper the rosters, the better rosters, and I included Philly as one of those because on practical application on the field, they did not look as dominant, certainly not as dominant as Baltimore did against Philly playing against Green Bay, where Jordan Love throws 3 interceptions in the game. And, I mean, this was the highlight of this game was Dallas Goedert's 24-yard touchdown catch and run where he stiff-armed three times. It was one of those just memorable runs, just running down the sideline, couldn't get knocked out of bounds, just kept stiff-arming the same guy into the end zone. And they were up 16-3, and you thought, okay, they took control of this game. But then give Green Bay credit. They went on a 9-play, 79-yard drive. And this game was 16-13 or 16-10 into the fourth quarter. Closer than really it should have been. And then Philly, kicked a field goal. They kicked 2 more field goals, actually. Didn't even put it in the end zone, but kicked 2 more field goals to eventually win it 22-10. But yeah, not a very dominant performance. Detroit got to sit and rest and get healthy. Philly lost Nakobe Dean in this game because they had been pretty healthy, but they lose Nakobe in this game. So yeah, that was not a stellar performance at all by Philadelphia. I thought they would be more dominant in this game. I thought they and listen, it was a double-digit win. You give the defense credit for holding Green Bay to 10 points, getting the interceptions from Love. Now, one was the end of the game bomb in the end zone. Another was, I think, a wide receiver slip. So they weren't all on Jordan. But still, the defense holding Green Bay to 10 points, impressive. But Green Bay offense isn't Detroit offense. That's for sure. If they do eventually meet. Remember, Philly is home against the winner of tonight's game. They have to get through another game first.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I mean is you're going to have another potent offense coming in if you're the Detroit Lions with Washington winning that game. And we saw not punting for the third game this season. They can score with anybody there. I just don't know if that Washington defense is going to have a snowball's chance in hell of stopping what Detroit does on offense. But you just look at that and say, all right, injuries and the offense not quite looking up to it. You already just plucked the wings off the Minnesota Vikings to end the season. And so amongst the teams that we earmarked as contenders, not many people looking like they're going to scare the Detroit Lions, at least right now, for a team that, like you said, got the benefit of sitting home this weekend and not seeing any more of their players go down the way the Eagles did. So we can get to plenty of that. We will get to the doink, the divisional doink that actually went the positive direction for the Washington Commanders in the game last night as well, Dad. But as we had Wild Card Weekend going on and all this great football being played, a chance to sit and digest all that, we also had some of our first big coaching news in quite a while in the NFL that wanted to get to off the top here. As the New England Patriots made it official and signed former linebacker Mike Vrabel and former Tennessee Titans head coach to now succeed Gerard Mayo after going one and done in his campaign with New England. We know Gerard Mayo had been selected as the successor while still on the staff for Bill Belichick. Things went bad in year one. Most people expected them to, no matter what, felt it was unfair the way that Mayo was done. But Dad, ultimately, we laid this out on paper before the job even came over, that if Mike Vrabel was available and interested, based on his track record, based on what he had done already as the Titans coach for a long time, and based on the opportunity that the Patriots now have with Drake May looking the way he did in adverse situations this year, this felt like if you could make the upgrade, it would be just that. So what did you make of how the Patriots actually went about this, and do you think this can work with Mike Vrabel back in New England?
Well, listen, I think Mike Vrabel is a hell of a coach, without question. And I was surprised he wasn't a head coach last year in the last cycle. And he was an analyst for Cleveland, and that job ended when the season ended, so he could interview in person. He didn't have a job anymore. And you knew he, as the former coach, and Ben Johnson as the new first-time head coach were going to be the two hottest names out there. And Ben Johnson is obviously still coaching. They can't do any in-person interviews, anybody who's employed, until after the divisional round. So, but Ben Johnson's going to get the offer. So, listen, it's not shocking. New England went to Vrabel. Vrabel was going to coach somewhere this year. He would have had his choice, but he's going home and playing for the team that he played for. They have the 4th pick in the draft. They have their quarterback. The most important hire is going to be who he hires as the offensive coordinator to then develop that quarterback. That we still have to wait and see. We can sit here and talk about the mockery the Rooney Rule is, where, again, the Rooney Rule, or teams are supposed to interview minority candidates for the job. Who do they interview? Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich?
Yes, which they in the most transparent mockery of the rule, posted both of them on the same graphic that was released by the team's social media account. And it's not to bash the people in the social account, but Dad, it just looks like more of a checked box in a situation that kind of underscores how difficult it is to go out here and legislate the Rooney Rule when everyone looks at this and goes, oh yeah, we understand how the Mike Vrabel New England thing would happen. He's one of their own. There's tons of connective tissue there. He's a Ring of Honor member at the team, and now he's available inexplicably after the Titans go and run Rand Carthon out of town this last year after siding with him the year before. You can understand, hey, you're never fully going to be able to stop someone from going out there and signing their guy, but the spirit of the Rooney Rule is something that I still think is necessary, but in practicality has a really difficult time of actually going and affecting these owners from going out here and just signing whoever the hell they want to sign already.
You're right. The theory of the rule is a good rule. The practical application of the rule is not good. Pep Hamilton last was the offensive coordinator of the Texans in 2022, and Byron Leftwich was the last time he coached. Again, for both these guys, haven't coached since 22. He was the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. So yeah, I mean, it's not shocking Vrabel gets hired. It just kind of shows you the joke of a rule that it is and actually enforcing it. Certainly a discussion, I'm sure, that will be had yet again. But again, the overlying factor here is it's not a shock that Mike Vrabel is with New England, given his ties in New England. Everybody were putting those two together, and he's a guy that should be there for a while. Gerard Mayo had been obviously involved with the Patriots for a number of years, obviously as a player and assistant coach. But Vrabel has the head coaching experience. It should get some years to kind of get his culture instituted in the program. Again, the most important hire is who's going to help develop Drake May, and Robert Kraft is trusting Mike Vrabel with that task.
Yeah, and the Drake May of it all, I truly think was the accelerator in everything that happened, Dad, because this is a situation where obviously from the outside, there's a ton of angles and ways to slice this, but I think this can be about a lot of things simultaneously, right? Gerard Mayo, who had been identified by that organization years ago while he was still on the staff as their future head coach, came in and didn't seem to do a great job by any account, by any stretch of the imagination here. Gerard Mayo's year one from his coaching standpoint, from everything we've heard internally and externally, sounds like it did not go the way that they planned there. You also had Drake May going out there and looking well ahead of schedule on a roster that everybody knew wasn't going to be good. I don't think anyone looked at the Patriots roster, sans maybe the defense, and said this is supposed to be a good group. And before the season started, you had Christian Barmore dealing with blood clots, unfortunately not available to that team. You had already Matthew Judon get moved away and go to the Atlanta Falcons before the season. So it all showed the signs of a team that was going to be bad there. You also, I don't think going into this offseason had anticipated when you made the move to Gerard Mayo that Mike Vrabel was going to be available in the ways that he was there, and certainly wanted to see that through. And so I think all of those things combined, the availability of a candidate like Mike Vrabel and the increased pressure that feeling like you've got a commodity at quarterback puts on you, where, Dad, maybe if it's not going so well or you didn't have a star quarterback, you let Gerard Mayo work through some of the early growing pains because you've identified him, because you know him and he means so much to the franchise here. But now when you've got that pressure of, oh, okay, we got 4 more years of this if you do the 5th-year option on the rookie contract, to go and maximize this window for a guy we really think highly of here, I don't know if this is a learn-on-the-job type situation anymore. Again, especially after year one looked at times as bad as it did with Mayo.
So one of the slots is filled. New England, we still have the Jets, New Orleans, Chicago, Jacksonville, and Vegas. Now it'll come down to New England and the draft. They have the 4th pick in the draft. Where do they go? Bill was notorious, Belichick, for trading back, but that's when they had a late pick, which they normally did in his tenure until Tom was gone before they had higher picks. Do they go? They probably go offensive line. There's a few tackles that are available that could go with the 4th pick, or that they trade it for more parts because they have holes to fill. So that obviously we have a bunch of time for that. But not shocking that the first one off the table is Mike Vrabel, again, because he doesn't have a job and could be hired right now, as opposed to coordinators that are being interviewed that are still coaching.
Yeah, and we knew it was getting a little bit spicy, where you had heard we had heard reports and rumblings that, hey, Tom Brady had maybe picked up the phone and the Las Vegas Raiders were throwing their hat in the ring for Mike Vrabel, using the benefit of that relationship here. But at the end of the day, Mike Vrabel goes back, and again, another former Patriots linebacker is going to get an opportunity to lead this team now. And try and go make the best of what Drake May has shown in year one at quarterback for that franchise. So plenty more to get into on that front. And again, in the coaching front, interesting to look at what you brought up from the Steelers game, the future of Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, who got some questions asked last year, and I'm sure it's going to be even more uncomfortable after another very lackluster effort in the postseason here. But coming up next, it was a full slate on Wild Card Weekend. We gave you some of the hits, but coming up next, we'll give you some of the sounds. It's Mic'd Up Monday, Super Wild Card Edition here on GoJo and Golic, coming up next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We have plenty to get to again. Coming up in about a half hour, LeBron James going to join us, Los Angeles Lakers superstar, four-time NBA champion, going to stop by the show and catch up with him. Delighted to be back. Official friend of the program status now. 2 times out here means you're our friend, and LeBron is required to give me his cell phone number. That's non-negotiable, and so we'll negotiate that off air, as I just contradict myself there. But in the meantime, we had a busy weekend in the NFL. Let's get to Mic'd Up Monday and see some of the best sights and sounds from over the weekends here. As we looked at back on, and let's start with the one that you were a part of calling here. On Saturday night here, the Ravens and Steelers gave us an absolute banger here, and Lamar Jackson had plenty of great things gushing about his teammate Derrick Henry after the win. Here he was with his player comp for King Henry after a dominant performance.
It looked like a movie clip. Like, you know, when, like, I'm going to give Cars. You watch the movie Cars? You're a little bit too old to watch Cars, but anyway, for kids, I was a kid when I watched Kids. I was a kid when I watched Cars, that's all I'm saying. But you know when Lightning McQueen just flying, flashing past, and then it's like, that's how Derrick looked when he was running past, and all those guys just, it looked like a movie, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'd rather be watching it than being on the opposite side of the ball. I know that.
So, hot take for me, one of the holes in my resume, I've never seen Cars. That might have just been like the timing of me age-wise, but never saw Cars to get the reference. But, Dad, I love the fact that Lamar Jackson, the guy that's going to have his third MVP before 30, looks at Derrick Henry the same way the rest of us do, which is in complete and total awe.
You know, I in calling the game was questioning the game plan of Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator for Pittsburgh. Because, you know, Derrick Henry, listen, obviously incredible, 186 yards on 26 carries. But Lamar Jackson had 81 yards on 15 carries. And between the two of them, that's what helps the play action. And the fakes to Derrick Henry would have the edge rusher, in this case, like a TJ Watt, screaming down the line to play the run, the Derrick Henry run. And then Lamar would pull it and go around edge. Now, obviously, the defense is set and game plan to have somebody scrape off the outside, and it would be a linebacker. But they were getting blocked. They were getting sealed. And Lamar had the corner was running for days. So I didn't understand. There was a late adjustment to that into the second half of slow playing that a little bit and changing it up. But listen, you give they're two of the best runners in the game, but I didn't think Pittsburgh at all helped with the game plan and the execution, I should say, more of the game plan, and maybe give Baltimore more credit for executing the game plan. Again, they ran 72 plays to Pittsburgh's 45 plays. It was a unbelievably dominant performance. Pittsburgh made a little bit of a run in the third quarter. Russell Wilson hit a couple of deep balls, which Baltimore had been susceptible earlier in the season, which they need to shore that up. But overall, this was just a complete domination.
Yeah, Pittsburgh made a gamble, and they said, we would rather stop Derrick Henry and put the ball in Lamar Jackson's hand. They chose poorly in that case here. Lamar Jackson's 10 design runs tied his total from week 3 for the most by any quarterback in a game this season. But, Dad, you're right, especially with Zay Flowers out. They put more 2 tight end sets on the field, gave him more blockers on the perimeter for that police escort down the sideline, and he had a really potent game on the ground that did not do the Steelers any favors. So they had a bad game plan coming in to address that. They said, hey, we'd rather not have 22 going down State Street. And so Lamar Jackson said, okay, I will oblige you. And the rest was history on that game here. Speaking of history, the Houston Texans now go back-to-back seasons winning a playoff game here. And they have plenty of added motivation this time around here. Take a listen to D'Amico Ryans, the Houston Texans head coach, after their win over the Los Angeles Chargers, getting a little jab at Rex Ryan, who had made a joke about the Los Angeles Chargers basically having a bye week going into this game against a Houston Texans team that we know had looked far less than themselves down the stretch of this season. Here he goes.
Go, everybody out! Hey, man. Hey, outstanding job by everybody. How was that bye week? Hey, man, you talk about complete team football. We've been talking about all year. Talk about playing complementary football. Everybody, O-line, D-line, CJ, great job, man. Great job.
Dad, safe to say they heard the comments. Now, I appreciated Azeez Al-Shaair, who gets a lot of grief, obviously, a guy that was suspended earlier this season for a late hit that a lot of people thought was pretty dirty. He even said, he's like, I don't hold it against Rex Ryan. This is TV. He's like, he played in this league. He knows there's no such thing as a bye week. But at this point in the season, Dad, you know you're looking for any extra motivational chip. And D'Amico Ryans and the Texans no doubt hit that button and looked as good as they've looked all season against the Charger squad that had been most people's pick coming off a year where they looked well ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers were out to a 6-0 lead after the first quarter in kind of a slow game, and then it was boom, boom, out go the lights. Houston scored the next, they were up 20-6 going into the fourth quarter. It was a game, where both D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud both kind of did what footballers do, is kind of lean toward the moment. The season wasn't very good, and they both basically, paraphrasing in different ways, they said, we're happy the season went the way it did. It made us grow. It made us learn. You know, it's kind of like the bye week. Oh, we have a bye week. Oh, we're happy with the bye week. Oh, we don't have a bye week. Oh, we have momentum going. You kind of morph into what you need. And they were saying that about it not being a good year because it wasn't. Again, they were the winners of a mediocre division, and they were playing some mediocre football. But we know the playoffs are a different ball game, and it's one and done. You win, you move on. You lose, and today, you know, you're packing your lockers up. So Houston, that defense for Houston has been, the edge rushers are phenomenal. The defense is playing well. Joe Mixon proves to be one of the big pickups. Like the offseason, we talked about the running back as they ran the ball 34 times and passed it 33 times. You can't have much more complimentary football than that.
You mentioned it. The defense for Houston, to me, is the story of this game. Pressured Justin Herbert on 19 of his 36 dropbacks in that game and forced 11 quick pressures under 2.5 seconds getting to the quarterback with 5 completely unblocked pressures. They had the highest quick pressure rate forced in any career regular or postseason game in Justin Herbert's career. Justin Herbert, an abysmal day overall for him. Threw more interceptions in one game than he threw the entire season. I'm pretty sure he's got to be the only quarterback ever to do that. I think I saw that. I don't even feel the need to fact check that because spiritually that seems right. But credit goes in a strength-on-strength matchup. We talked about Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt on the edges for the Los Angeles Chargers here. And going up against Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that group on the other side of Houston continued what had been, I think, the second-best quarterback pressure unit in football all season long.
A quick note before we move on. The Chargers had 261 total yards. Ladd McConkey had 197 of them. He had 9 catches for 197 yards. The Chargers had 261 total yards. Ladd McConkey, I mean, had an unbelievable year, but he was basically the entire offense for the Chargers.
So their task this offseason is going to be finding more young lads, pun fully intended,
yes,
to catch the football on the perimeter for Justin Herbert and to help supplement a guy that they definitely hit on as a rookie here. Speaking of hits, this game had a lot of them here. The Bills rolled over that Denver Broncos defense that had been stout all year long. But one of the scenes that stuck out during the game, Josh Allen, apoplectic in the middle of the game, berating one of the officials for a penalty he thought should have been called in the back of the end zone. We ended up seeing a scene of the referee going over to Josh Allen on the bench and having a conversation with him. Here is what Josh Allen told us after the game about what was said.
What was going on when the ref came over to talk to you, like all the way to the bench? What was he saying? What was going on?
Was that after? I wasn't happy with what was going on, and I was yelling a little bit, and he just said, "Don't be yelling." So my bad. Sorry to Bill.
Did he apologize?
I won't say anything about that.
Josh Allen has incredible, it's not quite like Riley Leonard aw shucks energy, but I think it's big sweetie stuff where obviously for a guy that's a football playing moose that inflicts a lot of damage, he can still go out after the game and turn on the charm with them. But Dad, they turned on the beef in this game. The Buffalo Bills just went and looked and said, hey, the Denver Broncos, number 1 in the NFL in rushing success rate allowed on defense, one of the best teams, top 5 in almost any defensive metric when it comes to stopping the run, and said, we're going to punch you directly in the face. We're going to run it right down your throat, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah, they did. But from a scoring standpoint, this game was 10 minutes ago in the third quarter. It was a 13-7 game, and then the Buffalo was driving with about 3 minutes to go. They had a 4th and 1 on Denver's 24-yard line. If Denver gets a stop there, it's 13-7. Denver has the ball. But that's when Josh Allen has unbelievable amount of time and throws the touchdown pass to Ty Johnson in the back of the end zone where Johnson stayed in bounds. So instead of Denver getting the ball on a stop on 4th and 1, Buffalo scores and goes up 21-7, and they score the final 10 points of the game as well.
Yeah, one of the best throws you'll see all week, and the body control by Ty Johnson to not have that foot hit out of bounds as he gets a knee down there. But you're right, Dad. Closer, but never really felt all that close. And part of that reason is the dominance of Buffalo up front offensively. The Bills, as they've done all year long, use more jumbo sets, putting an extra O-lineman on the field than anyone else in football. They had 6 or more offensive linemen on the field in 22.2% of their offensive plays against the Broncos, their third highest rate of the season. And they continued, Dad, to just get downhill with this running back group there. And that's honestly, if you're spinning forward to the game that you're going to get called, interesting because the team right in the same breath as Denver in terms of rush defense all year has been the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, so looking forward to this game. But you think the Bills fans were a little stunned when Denver took the ball and marched 5 plays, 70 yards in the opening drive and went up 7-0? They had to be like, wait, what the hell is going on? But it was Buffalo. You're right. While the score was close in the third quarter, it never felt close. It felt like Buffalo was obviously the better team.
Certainly, they're the better team, and they move on now to give us the matchup that we all want here. This is sports talk fodder from the gods to have this Ravens team and Bills team, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, the guys that will finish 1 and 2 in the MVP in some order, going at it in this game here. Let's finish things off with the city of brotherly love here. Jalen Hurts coming back after missing a couple of games due to concussion. The Eagles quarterback room had dealt with a ton of injury, and Jalen Hurts said there is still more left for the Eagles offense to go out here and try and get right as they move on.
Execution, it was rhythm. We gotta find our rhythm early in the game, and I think first and foremost our defense played their tails off, and created turnovers, and I think ultimately, when you have those opportunities, you got to take advantage of them, and that starts with me.
Boy, Dad, the beginning of that game, you had the fumble on the opening kickoff that led to a short field where Philadelphia got immediate points out of it and did it in a way where we thought was going to be par for the course most of the day. You saw Jalen Hurts drop back, 4-man rush from Green Bay, and that Eagles offensive line gave him all the time in the world to go out in the back of the end zone and find his receiver for the score. But after that, offense a lot tougher to come by when Dallas Goedert wasn't stiff-arming dudes into oblivion. So what'd you make of Jalen Hurts' first game back after injury?
Well, again, probably, a little bit of rust. Was 13 of 21 for 131 yards. But they were going to run the ball. Saquon Barkley ran for more yards than Green Bay ran for as a team. Saquon Barkley was amazing, like Derrick Henry was amazing. This was another one where after the Goddard touchdown at the end of the third, they're up 16-3. And then, as I mentioned in the first segment, Josh Jacobs scores on a 1-yard run in the beginning of the fourth to make it a 1-score game. But kind of like the Buffalo-Denver game that was kind of close, it didn't really feel like Green Bay was going to threaten Philadelphia, like they were always going to be the better team. And again, Philadelphia scores the final 6 points of that game. They have 2 field goals to finish the game, but the defense holds Green Bay down.
The defense holds him down here. A.J. Brown got some sideline reading in, and Saquon Barkley cost a lot of people betting anytime touchdowns for him a lot of money by going no score at the end of that game when he had the wide open rushing lane to try and take it home. Coming up next, we will set up the game where someone in college football will try and take it all home and look at the game of the weekend in Washington next on GoJo and Golic. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes here, LeBron James going to join us off the top of the second hour. We'll have Marshall Newhouse also coming up after that to look ahead to Monday Night Football, Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams as we put a bow on Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. But, Dad, speaking of putting a bow on it, college football now has their national championship set. After a big weekend, Ohio State, congratulations to the Buckeyes on getting a huge win over the Texas Longhorns that included one of those plays that, Dad, if they complete the mission and after that Michigan loss, find a way back from all of those slights to go and lift a national championship, which would be the first for Ryan Day, their first since 2015. The play by Jack Sawyer, the sack, fumble, scoop, and score that rocked the world is going to be one of those plays that I think they show pictures, video, and talk about in Columbus for a long time. Here was Ryan Day after the game talking about that play and what Jack Sawyer's meant to this program.
I can't say enough about Jack Sawyer. He's a guy who loves being a Buckeye. He loves his teammates. He's done everything we asked him to do. He's a captain. He's everything, that we could possibly ask for in a captain. And to make a play like that in that moment, we talked about before the game, if you want to leave a legacy behind, you become a legend. He just became a legend in Ohio State.
Now, Holly Rowe told a great story during that game about Jack Sawyer's commitment. He was a five-star player coming out of high school. He was Ryan Day's, I believe, first big commit when he took over as the Buckeyes head coach. And after him and his dad took the visit to Ohio State, his dad said, all right, hey, listen, I know you want to commit right now. We're going to take a beat here. We're going to think about this. We're going to go through the process here and not seem too eager. And then later on that day when his dad laid down to take a nap, Jack Sawyer secretly called Ryan Day and said, I'm coming to Ohio State, and now the rest is history. Dad, were you huffing and puffing along with him after that touchdown? That big dude was rumbling.
Oh, I can't believe how the piano would have jumped on my back trying to run that far after sacking Quinn Ewers, who, by the way, was Jack Sawyer's roommate. Remember, Quinn Ewers was at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He and Jack Sawyer were roommates, and Sawyer ends up getting the sack fumble. While Ohio State will look at that as one of the big plays of the year if they're to finish this off against Notre Dame, Texas has to be doing some what ifs, right? I mean, they're down 21-14. They drive the ball down to the near Ohio State's end zone. They get two in a row interference calls in the end zone. They have first and goal at the Ohio State 1-yard line, and they try and run the first play up the gut, and they don't get anything. How the hell they run the next play wide? I don't understand it. And you lose, 7 yards? And then you have an incomplete pass, and then now it's 4th and goal, and it's the sack fumble, return. I don't know how you don't run 3 plays up the gut from the 1-yard line, and then if it's 4th down, you try whatever you have to try or I was stunned at a wide play on the goal line. I just don't get it. They had a chance to tie it up 21-all. Who knows where the game would have gone from them, but there's got to be a lot of what is for Texas as far as to go with a lot of celebrating for Ohio State. Ohio State didn't look like the team that beat Tennessee or Oregon. Jeremiah Smith got 3 targets, 1 catch. Texas kind of, I don't know if they blueprinted, but they did a great job in defending Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, certainly I think in a different way than Notre Dame is going to. Notre Dame, we know, plays the most man coverage of anyone in the dance and likely won't change that formula up too much now on the biggest stage. But you're right, it was a very different day for them. I still think, to your point, the Texas what-ifs, the Travion Henderson screen catch for a touchdown before the half is one of the most inexplicable plays I have ever seen in my life, given the circumstances there. How you let that happen in a spot where, that was a let's get to the end of the half kind of play after Texas was able to pull this in and make this close. That was unbelievable.
And they blitzed. Texas blitzed. So they don't have defenders back. I mean, it was almost the perfect play call in another scenario, not the end of a half. I mean, you don't rarely see a blitz and then you throw the perfect screen pass and you got nothing but room in front of you. You're right. That is another head scratcher. But congrats to Ohio State. They got it done. Now they match up with Notre Dame, where Marcus Freeman went to Ohio State and has played them twice in the last couple of years. So it's going to be and Ohio State out to what, like a 9.5-point favorite. That's fine. Be the underdog, no problem.
It's actually been bet down right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Ohio State is 7.5-point favorite, so just under a touchdown favorite now, which, maybe it's some indication that, again, a lot of people were going to snatch that up, and Notre Dame's been resourceful. But for the next week, you are going to hear exactly what Dad just mentioned. Hey, did you know Marcus Freeman went to Ohio State and played linebacker, and Notre Dame's got no chance in this game, considering all the injuries they've already suffered that have been well documented. Adding more to that pile now, Anthony Knapp, their freshman left tackle, who by some publications had been a freshman All-American after starting the season on the bench and getting pulled into duty because of some injuries. And now going into this game, he's already ruled out. Rocco Spindler, their offensive guard's going to try and get back, but Charles Jagasaw, who started his first game in a Notre Dame uniform in that win in the Orange Bowl, may get the nod at left tackle. They're going to sort that out over the coming weeks. But, Dad, Ohio State's got the best defense left in the dance. They've got the best player in Jeremiah Smith left in the dance here. And surely there is no way Notre Dame can win this, even though there's no way they should have won probably the last 2 games, given all the injuries that have happened or been to this point at all. So doubt them at your own peril. Lord knows I won't at this point. But I have a feeling it's going to be a week where, leading up to all of this, Dad, we're going to hear a lot about that. And quite honestly, we're going to hear a lot about these folks, the Bears, continuing to sniff around Marcus Freeman. What part of contract extension did y'all not understand, Chicago? What kind of weird home wreckers are you? You know how much of your fan base loves this Notre Dame football team? How much of your fan base has derived the only joy in their lives from what Notre Dame's done this season? And you want to come in here and keep talking about old stuff after Notre Dame and Marcus have locked it down? Shame on them. So if I have to hear about that anymore in this last week, Chicago Bears fans, I know I said I would curse you if that went down, and you've pointed out accurately that it's already seemed like you've been cursed, but I'll add to the pile gladly here if you wrecked the joy in my life right now.
Yeah, Marcus, and good for him. If in fact there is NFL team showing interest, that's the way it works. But Chicago, stay away from our coach, because you're right. We're in a week of Notre Dame has no chance. Notre Dame doesn't belong there. Notre Dame should be in a conference. That's what we'll hear for the next week.
Yes, I'm excited to hear that take once again from Cam Newton on First Take at some point here, because they are just going to play the hits in the lead up to a week where we're going to go over every aspect of this game with a fine-tooth comb and probably exhaust all options by the end. So prepare for the weird Notre Dame conference takes. Prepare for more arguing about their path to this point here, even though in the playoff all they've done is beat 2/3 of the top end of the Big Ten and an SEC team in the process. But I digress. We'll have plenty of time for this game. Congratulations to Ohio State there. An incredible performance and an incredible continued response to adversity from that team here. But, Dad, before we got too far into this, did want to give some credit where credit is due to the folks of the Washington Commanders, man, like we've talked a lot about inept franchises making turnarounds. Going into the season, everyone looked at the Chicago Bears and said, hey, Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus, they're going to be the ones that can pull off what the Houston Texans did. Look at all the receivers. Look at this, that, and the third. And at the end of the day, it ends up being who else other than Washington? Dan Quinn in his second bite at the apple as a head coach and Jaden Daniels at quarterback that end up leading an effort where they get the win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Baker Mayfield, who a lot of people, Jaden Daniels made the Pro Bowl. A lot of people thought that should have been Baker Mayfield over him. 23-20 win. The Commanders don't punt at all. And, Dad, they have our Campbell's Chunky Play of the Week, presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal, where we get the doink, the divisional doink, as it was dubbed on the broadcast, that sends them into, I mean, that sound, Dad, that dull thud is usually the kind of thing that keeps, I'm sure Bears fans had PTSD from that, knowing their history with that and Cody Parkey. And at the end of the day, that ends up being the sound that Commanders fans will now associate, Dad, with what feels like the curse truly being lifted off after the Dan Snyder era for this team.
Yeah, and I mean, we sit there and talk about a game of inches. That was a game of inches, right on that kick. That kick, it goes a little more to the right and hits the post a little more square, and it's no good, and you're going to overtime, and you don't know what will happen in overtime. So kudos to Washington. Kudos, what a year Baker Mayfield had. I mean, by the way, he's the first quarterback to complete at least 80% of his passes and have 2 touchdowns in a playoff game and lose. I mean, the dude has had a monster year. You saw him running the ball. He's not the fleet-footed runner a Lamar Jackson or a Jaden Daniels is, but he'll just drop his shoulder and run. So what a year he had. But really, and now there was a lot of time left, so still anything could have happened. But Washington down 17-13, and they had that long drive. I think it was like 14 plays that ended the third quarter and went into the fourth quarter. And they end up losing the ball on downs at the 3-yard line. And you're like, okay, Tampa Bay, start to kill clock. Try as best you can. You're up 17-13. And in a play that you are just stunned at Tampa Bay's own 15-yard line, they try a jet sweep with Jalen McMillan, the wide receiver, coming across the back of the formation. And even Baker Mayfield said, this one was on me. You have to time the snap so you can turn, because you got a wide receiver running full speed on a jet sweep to take the handoff. And the snap, the cadence was just a little late. And when Baker turned, he put it on the hip of McMillan. The ball ends up on the ground. Fred Warner, the great linebacker, ends up on the ball. Washington scores, goes up 20-17 before Tampa Bay then ties it before the ultimate kick. But wow, I mean, that was when Tampa Bay, you thought, could try and grind the clock out, just an inexplicable fumble.
Yeah, you mentioned the recovery.
I mean, not Fred Warner.
Bobby Wagner staring. Yeah, Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner. Yes. Bobby Wagner.
Yeah, you're mixing up your future Hall of Fame linebackers that used to call the NFC West home. As in this game, you kind of had that with him and Levante David staring at each other, 2 guys. Now, Levante David's been such a fixture for this franchise in particular. Obviously, Bobby Wagner, a late addition to the Washington Commanders in the last few years, but someone who certainly made his presence felt. And you're right, Dad. That's one of those spots where you almost take those plays for granted, quite honestly, that the mechanics of the operation are so well ingrained at this point in the season. But it's a reminder that every little bit of timing in these offenses matters. And that was a spot where they gave the game away ultimately there. You'd say that, Dad. And I think after this game, like obviously that's going to be a big moment in a game that looked in the second half, once it got out of first gear, to kind of be a great back and forth affair between these two offenses and quarterbacks. You mentioned the play from Baker Mayfield, who Chris Collinsworth really wanted to make the Disturber happen as a nickname. Chris, I'm sorry, man, we love you, but fetch isn't going to happen here. You got to let that one go. He left that thing hanging for Mike Tirico, lobbing it off the backboard. And Tirico, it was like I mean, I've never seen someone resist that harder than Tirico did in that moment. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but Baker looked great, Dad. Jaden Daniels putting his body on the line on the other side. Some vintage Jaden Daniels stuff. If you watched him yeet his body into people at LSU recklessly and take massive hits, you really felt that hit of nostalgia when he went over on the sideline and got waylaid so bad his face started bleeding in that game. So there was a lot of that stuff there. But, Dad, I think one of the biggest takeaways is going to be the clock management yet again of Todd Bowles in big moments in this game, letting valuable time bleed off the clock. Now they end up punching it home in the first half, and Baker and Mike Evans find that connection that ultimately erases the mistake, but letting 10 seconds run off the clock inexplicably when you got timeouts in your pocket there, and at the end of the game, the same deal as the Washington Commanders are ultimately able to squeeze the life out of the clock. You do wonder, Dad, I don't know if it's going to cost him this year, but the seat going to start to warm up under Todd Bowles as moments like these continue to stack in the post-Tom Brady version of this franchise.
Yeah, I agree. That waste of 10, 12 seconds was tough to watch as they were trying to get to the line and run a play and then end up calling timeout after a lot of time burned off. I mean, Washington had 69 plays in this game. Tampa Bay had 44. Washington had the ball for 11 minutes more. So you talk about you add clock management in with the fact that you only had the ball for 24 minutes and for, 25 less plays. You have to be more efficient with your time in your possessions, and time management has been an issue for Tampa Bay. Those things add up. But all in all, congrats to Washington. You're right. I mean, it just to put the stench away from the Dan Snyder era, the new era of the Washington Commanders led by Dan Quinn, that tough mentality that he has. And they got obviously a winner in Jaden Daniels, who will be the offensive rookie of the year. Tough task now. They go to Detroit. Detroit had the week off, but hey, they're still in it. As long as you're putting a helmet and pads on, you got a chance.
I'm sure the Commanders feel like they can score with anybody, and they've proven that out over the long course of the their season. There was no second half slump for Cliff Kingsbury in the offense that we had become accustomed to here, a real renaissance for everybody involved here. So we can legislate what's going to happen. The Lions are going to win in the coming weeks, but congratulations to a franchise that has known nothing but sadness for so long and now gets to celebrate a little bit coming off a historic weekend for their team. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. You may have missed it over the weekend, but college basketball gave us a banner performance here as Cooper Flagg put on for his city, which, by the way, is Newport, Maine, for those of you just keeping score now. Cooper Flagg put up 42 points and set an ACC freshman record for a single game as Duke beat Notre Dame 86-78. I can't believe y'all made me read this stuff coming off a weekend where I'm supposed to be happy about the things that going on here. Before the game, Cooper Flagg's season high was 26 points. He shot 11 of 14 from the field. He had 4 of 6 from beyond the arc in that game as the man widely expected to be one of the top picks, if the not top pick in the NBA draft, showed you exactly why in a conference game against Notre Dame. I hope you guys are happy. Coming up next, we'll make you actually happy as LeBron James stops by to talk about the Lakers season. All right, hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic rolling along here. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Marshall Newhouse coming up in about 20 minutes to talk more NFL. But we had a chance over the weekend to catch up with LeBron James. You probably saw if you're following the DraftKings network on YouTube or GoJo and Golic. Got some picks heading into Wild Card Weekend. But we also had a chance to catch up with the King about what's gone on so far for this Lakers season, their identity going forward, and what he sees as next. And a little bit of good family talk about Bronny and Bryce James as well. Here is our conversation with LeBron James. All right, fun for us to welcome back friend to the show and a guy you all know very well, 4-time NBA champion, 4-time Finals MVP, 4-time regular season MVP, and Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James, kind enough to join us. LeBron, good morning, man. How you doing?
Oh, good morning, guys. Always good to join you guys. Happy to be a part of the show once again, and let's have some fun, man. I'm excited about this.
No, we're looking forward to it as well. And obviously, before we get into that fun, LeBron, at the time we're recording this right now, we know in Los Angeles, where you're at here, the site of tremendous tragedy with the fires going on right now. For you guys, we know we talk about all the time, athletes are members of these communities that they play for here. And for you guys, your game against Charlotte postponed. We know, unfortunately, your head coach and J.J. Redick lost his rental home in the fires as well. So how are you and your teammates and the organization doing in the midst of all this?
Yeah, obviously, first of all, like you said, before we even get started, condolences and prayers and everything goes out to the city of Los Angeles, obviously the Pacific Palisades and, Hollywood Hills and all the surrounding areas. For family members that's been lost, obviously a lot of homes have been, lost and burned down. Obviously, you mentioned our head coach, J.J. Redick, a few dear friends of mine as well who lived in the Pacific Palisades. It's something that we haven't ever seen before in this community. And as one of the members of this community, obviously, you just try to continue to uplift, send your prayers out, your best wishes and well wishes to everyone in here. And, we hope we all can just wrap our hands around each other and continue to give each other strength throughout this difficult time and, see the greater side of it than the not so great. But like I said, my prayers and all my well wishes goes out to the whole city of Los Angeles and all the surrounding areas that's been affected by the fires.
No doubt, and hopefully sports, as it often is in life, can be a place for people to come together and rally, and for you guys, for the Rams that are still playing right now, you guys can be a place where people can come to escape what's going on here. There are never easy transitions back into talking sports, but we'll try and do that here now as you are in the midst of a season right now, one that certainly had ups and downs for you guys, but we know now at this point, especially looking at your last month or so here, you guys are playing really well, especially offensively here. Do you feel like this team has sort of found an identity here as you guys are about a month out from the trade deadline now?
Yeah, I think so. I think our identity is, one, defensively, we want to, bring physicality to the game, make teams try to do something that they do not like to do. And then offensively, we want to share the ball. We're very good when we're up in the high 20s in assists, and we're in the low teens of turnovers. And when we do that, we're a pretty good team. So, sitting right now at our record, obviously we've let some games get past us. We've also been able to come back in some games that maybe, throughout the course of the third or fourth quarter, we, was looking like it was slipping. But I feel like we have so much more room to improve. We are not the team I believe we're going to be, once February, March hit. But I do like our chances, and we got to continue to just put the work in, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, as we're getting close to the halfway point and you start to look ahead, how much is positioning for playoffs important? Right now you're in the playoffs and not in the play-in. So what is that compared to making sure bodies are healthy for the playoffs on where you're actually seated?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you just said it. When it comes to the postseason, if you're not going in with a healthy roster, then you're not giving yourself the best chance to win. So, we definitely want to continue to win games. We're in the Wild Wild West, where it's a lot of great teams, and teams are winning games and accumulating wins every single night, and we want to continue to do that as well. But like you said, if you're winning but you're going into the postseason and you're not healthy, you're not giving yourself a chance to win big. So there's definitely a fine line, and I hope we can be on both sides of the fences where we're winning games and we're healthy.
Certainly, your health always paramount for this team, and what you've been able to do now, just turning 40 and still going out here and posterizing guys that weren't even born when you got in the league here. I'm sure you've seen the tweet from back in the day that said LeBron is 30. Certainly this bleepery won't go on for much longer, thank God. And yet here we are a decade later with you still dominating the league. How have you been able to manage to continue to play at such a high level now at an age where no one's really been able to do this?
I just think about keeping my mind fresh, and young. I think having 3 kids in my household has definitely kept me younger than my age and my sport. Obviously, I'm still a young man in life, but I'm up there in this sport. But, having, the ability to now, work with my son every day and LeBron Jr., and then also have my 17-year-old son. He's a senior in high school. And then my 10-year-old daughter, who's a volleyball player and things of that nature. They bring so much life to the household. Well, Bronny has his own household now. But my other 2 kids, they're still here. So they give me a lot of life. And then just the joy of just playing the game that I love. I understand that it won't go on that much longer, through my 40s, but, just trying to appreciate all the moments that I have while I still have it.
Yeah, you're not empty nesters just yet. You and your
No,
wife
not
did
yet.
a little bit of time before that. I'll try to ask this in a way that's not detrimental. I'm 62. I'm chronologically old. As you said, you're 40. You're not chronologically old, but for the sport, you're old. Do you wake up in the morning after games feeling old at times?
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's times for sure. Oh, my goodness. There's times where I will wake up the next day without a game before and be like, oh, my God, what just happened? Did I just beat myself up in my sleep last night? Like, what's going on? And I have to remind myself, like, you're 22 years in your profession and you're 40 years old. So, you're going to have those nicks and bruises even when you didn't even fall asleep with them.
Well, you mentioned some of the things that have kept you young, and you talked about, being in the organization, playing with Bronny now. The last time we talked to you guys were getting ready to go into all of this. You got to share the court with him for that first time already, but what has the experience like now of being teammates with your son been like compared to what you maybe thought it was going to be?
It's been everything and more. I couldn't even imagine, just the opportunity to be able to be there with him on a day-to-day process, through practices, through film sessions, through plane rides, road trips, and things of that nature. Obviously, from time to time, he does go down to the G League and continue to work on his game and play in those games down there from time to time. But, every moment that he's been around it's still surreal. Like, I go into the locker room and, I'll be getting ready. I'm one of the first ones to get there, and then he'll fall in, and I'll just look over there like, oh, wow, yeah, this is real. So, it's been everything, man. It's so rewarding for me to just kind of show him the land of escape, the land of what it means to be a professional and how to approach it every day. And, just seeing him working from the outside looking in and now the inside looking in to get to where he is today is pretty cool and very fulfilling.
So now you have your son, Bryce, who committed to Arizona. How difficult was that? Now, you didn't go to college. Everybody knows that. But you have adopted Ohio State as your team, and he was recruited by Ohio State. So how difficult was that, and are you going to buy U of A gear?
I mean, it's always difficult and challenging because everyone believes that, if I had kids, they automatically go into Ohio State. And, obviously Bronny chose where he wanted to go. He chose where he best fit, at USC, and Bryce did the same thing, and those guys down there at U of A, they recruited Bryce very hard and believed in Bryce and believed in his maturation process and where he's going as far as a basketball player and as a young man. And, he made his own decision. And as parents, myself and Savannah, we just support him, and we're excited for his next chapter once he gets down there. And hopefully I don't have to buy the gear. I have a lot of friends that's U of A alum, and hopefully they can give me some of their stuff.
There you go. Yeah, somehow I imagine if you want it, you're going to come into as much as you want to in this process here. LeBron, congratulations on that front here. Before we let you go, though, I feel like we've got to come full circle on this. Last time, all the things got made about what your son was going to call you in the locker room here. Has he let a dad slip? Is he gone with King or any of the names you suggested? What did Bronny end up calling you now on the court and in the locker room?
No, he has not let a dad slip. He's been calling me Bron and 2-3, and we've been good. So far, off the court, though, it's still dad. So that's pretty cool.
There we go. A perfect balance of work life and home life there in a season that I'm sure has been special for a lot of reasons, but that chief among them here. Always appreciate the time, LeBron. Cannot thank you enough. Best of luck the rest of the way this season. Stay healthy. We're excited to see what the Lakers have in store.
I appreciate you guys always, man. It's always a pleasure coming on with you guys. And, best of luck and continue to do what you guys do. You guys are awesome.
Awesome stuff. Great catching up with LeBron James, Dad, and will be great to see him back on the court as well soon. Just the housekeeping, as we know, Los Angeles and the situation we described with LeBron at the beginning of that interview here, the wildfires that have ravaged so much of this city. and led to the postponement of games for both the Lakers and the Clippers. The NBA announced that after those games had been postponed, they're going to go on and play their regularly scheduled games coming up today at Crypto.com Arena and the Intuit Dome. The Lakers scheduled to host Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs, while the Clippers are going to host the Miami Heat. So trying to get back to some semblance of normalcy around here in a situation that's still dead objectively feels nowhere close to normal.
Yeah, and obviously not the norm. The game that was supposed to be played in Los Angeles, the Rams in Minnesota, will take place tonight in Glendale, Arizona. That game was moved at the end of last week. If we shared the football field together, what would you have called me?
Dad. I truly, that's the one thing I don't understand in all of this is how you can rewire years of what you've already done and operated on. And I get the reasons why it could happen. Again, we've been over it. Bosses at ESPN tried to get me to call you Mike on air when we were getting ready to do Golic and Wingo towards the end of our time there. And we both just kind of looked at them like they had three heads and went on about our way, calling each other Dad and Mike the way we always have. So, no, I would not have obliged that in any way there, knowing full well that even it's different in a team sport. But like, you're shorthand, you're working on the fly there. It's all instinct. I don't know how they can go there and try and rework that on the fly.
I do like the number. I do like the 2-3. You could have called me 9-0. Hey, 9-0. Sorry, I just kicked your ass on that one-on-one play. Something like that.
It would have been really, like, football's a disturbing sport to think about someone playing long enough to play with their son just because the sport is so violent. Like, it's honestly what, like, Frank Gore was the only one that ever really seemed like he was getting close to that, considering how long that dude played, so eating up 3 yards in a cloud of dust anytime anyway. But sports are always great. Like, I don't know about you, even doing game plan stuff in sports, I was always a numbers over names guy. Like, people always ask me, I have to go back and look up guys I played against because they were just numbers when we played. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you're going against, so-and-so this week. It's like, no, I'm going against number 90. He likes to, do bull stab, swim move in the run game. He tends to be a guy that tries to backdoor things as opposed to play it that way. Like, that's how I always was. So it would have made a lot more sense for me to call you numbers over names for sure.
Well, my first tackle, or one of my first tackles in the NFL was against Walter Payton. But it was just, I tackled the running back who happened to be number 34. I didn't sit there and consciously say on the football field, I just tackled Walter Payton. It was a play up the middle. Later on, he juked me on the outside and left me sitting on my butt as he ran down the field. But it was to your point, it is. You just kind of play the number, play the person. You don't really realize who it is while you're playing them.
That being said, probably a little bit different for LeBron James and the people he's going against at this point, considering gestures around it, everything there, and the impact that he has had on professional basketball. So that'll be interesting there. But yeah, again, it's been really weird out here the last couple of days to try and live business as usual in Los Angeles while so much has been going on. And so for these teams, for the fans that support them, for the opposing teams coming in, I'll be curious to see how this is going to go. I did not think they would resume play until later in the week. But again, coming up tonight, the Lakers and the Clippers both going to be back in action in Los Angeles as the Rams get set to take on the Vikings on the road, and will remain to be seen there. Coming up next, we'll look ahead at that game with Marshall Newhouse here on GoJo and Golic. Our thanks again to Lakers star and NBA legend LeBron James for joining us off the top of the second hour. If you missed any of that, check it out wherever you get our podcast. It'll be up here on YouTube as well after the show on the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel here. Got Marshall Newhouse getting ready to pop in here and talk a little NFL. And Dad, I'm sure we'll have to discuss with him, if you were ever going to read a book on the sideline of an NFL game, what would it be? We had the unbelievable image of A.J. Brown this weekend in Philadelphia on the sideline of a game where, listen, he wasn't seeing a ton of action outside of early in the game, a couple of catches. This was an Eagles game dominated by the ground, and A.J. Brown, they caught him on the sideline reading in the middle of the game, which he said is apparently a thing that he's done all season long. This is just something we caught on camera for the first time. But, Dad, I have to imagine this was never something that would have crossed your mind as a player.
Well, one of the reasons I ripped that movie on any given Sunday, which I think was one of the worst football movies I've ever seen, where the stars reading the newspaper on the sideline, an open newspaper. But here you have A.J. Brown reading. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know he did it all the time. He pulls inspirational quotes. He'll just go over a passage like between series, whether it's something positive or something negative happened on the field. They look to something positive. I've never seen that before. Never. Marshall, I don't know if you've seen that before. I have never had a teammate or seen anybody read anything on the sidelines from a book to a paper.
Nothing hardback or paperback out there. I've seen, obviously, iPads, and there's all kinds of stuff in people's pockets and stuff like that, and gum and seeds, but never reading material, no brochures out there. So that's a first for me. But listen, if he's dialed in like that, I don't know what you say to him, you know?
Yeah, Inner Excellence is the book that I'm sure is going to see an uptick in sales coming off this, since A.J. Brown going and using it as a motivational and mental skill sharpening tool is something that'll hit with a lot of people. And I have to imagine that image of him on the sideline reading a book is going to be up in every Philadelphia area elementary school teacher's board this coming year as they continue to try and get kids to read and be like, see, A.J. Brown even reads during football games. Knowledge is power. Go out there and become big and strong like A.J. Brown here. But Marshall, I also want, you recoiled when Dad took Any Given Sunday to task there. Disagreement with Dad calling that one of the worst football movies ever made.
Senior, it's a classic. I think you should retract everything you just said. Jamie Foxx was electric. Al Pacino was electric. I don't know what movie you were watching. Seriously.
Al Pacino did have a good speech in that game, a good pregame speech in that game. But yeah, other than that, I thought the movie was trash. I did. I thought it was horrible. I really did.
Inflex your chest.
Willie Beeman,
get metrics.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that movie gave way too much to popular culture to get thrown to the taken to task by my dad the way it does every time it comes up. So aging well there in the Game of Inches speech. Not a good speech, Dad. One of the all-time greatest speeches in any sports movie ever made here. We'll put some respect on Al Pacino's name in that moment here, and we'll put some respect on Wild Card Weekend and get to that before we close it off with the preview. Again, Marshall Newhouse, in addition to being an 11-year NFL veteran, also joins the folks on the pregame power-up as they get you ready for all the primetime games here on the DraftKings Network. You can catch them again coming up tonight before the Vikings game against the Los Angeles Rams that we've documented plenty is going to be played in Glendale, Arizona because of the fires here in Los Angeles here. But Marshall, outside of that, we talked a little bit about the Philadelphia Eagles and A.J. Brown. That offense looked like it was stuck in first gear a little bit in this game here. Jalen Hurts is always going to be a lightning rod in the middle of that based on the season he's had. What was your assessment of Jalen's performance in his first game back after dealing with that concussion?
It were levels of rust and just not being sharp, and the offense just looked like it couldn't get any momentum going. And Jalen Hurts, missed a few throws, made a couple bad decisions, but they were not the explosive team that we're used to seeing. And so I think they can get that figured out. But ultimately, this team has relied on Saquon on the offensive line. They got a lot of that production yesterday, but they need, in these playoff games, if they're going to go over the hump and beat the Lions, beat these bigger teams, Jalen Hurts is going to have to play lights out, and he's got to figure out where he's missing and catch up to the rest of the team.
So the other winners of Wild Card Weekend, the Commanders, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Texans. Which team and or player impressed you the most?
It's Lamar. It's got to be Lamar. We've been talking about he and Josh Allen's jockeying for this MVP vote towards the end of the season. There was a long stretch where I had it as Josh Allen just by a hair, just because they're so comparable and having such great seasons. But Lamar has I think, distanced himself from playing above what we already expect him to play at. And he's taking his passing accuracy to another level. He's taking his scrambling ability, which was already elite, to a level where we're like, oh, he's scrambling and gaining extra time in the pocket and then completing explosive plays like the touchdown near the goal line against Pittsburgh, where I'm just like, man, he's playing at his best ever right now in the most opportune time. So I think it's Lamar. He's elevating that team so much. And I think there's a still going around the internet of the zone read where Derrick Henry takes the explosive, but there are 3 Pittsburgh defenders who respect Lamar so much that they're almost off the screen to the left, with his play fake. And so he's playing at an incredible level right now.
Yeah, if you're ever wondering what it looks like to hold the backside of a defense when you hear people talk about that in a broadcast there, Marshall just pointed it out. No clearer illustration that we've ever seen. Marshall, one of I think the maybe surprises of the weekend to some was the Houston Texans going out there and forcing Justin Herbert into one of the worst games of his career. He's now authored a couple of playoff stinkers here. Is this a trend, a pattern, something we need to keep an eye on with Justin Herbert, or is this more a testament to Houston and what they are able to do on defense all season?
Well, yeah, that defense, and specifically the defensive line and their pass rush, was very chaotic, very disruptive, and they have produced for much of this season. I think Houston's drawbacks have been on the offensive side and not getting enough pass protection for C.J. Stroud, which is, very convenient because that's exactly what happened to the Chargers, especially on the interior. Justin Herbert was rushed all day. That was just a slop fest. But I think Justin Herbert, I thought we were at the point where he kind of been anointed as this top 5 talented guy, hadn't had the production, but you can blame that on a myriad of factors, including former head coaches and scheme and all that stuff. We're now at a point where he feels like a quarterback who doesn't turn it on when the lights are the brightest. And so that's a little worrying. He's, again, got the tools, but we now are in a show us stage, and he has yet to show us in a significant way. Houston balled out on defense, and they made that thing very difficult for him. But these are the moments where you expect a guy like him, of his caliber, to rise above and drag his team across the finish line.
talking about Houston, going back to last year, C.J. Stroud's rookie year, taking them to the playoffs. You see that kind of mirrored with Jaden Daniels in bringing Washington to the playoffs and getting a win. Your thoughts on Jaden and really his leadership? The stats are one thing, but his ability in the pocket and to lead this offense has been pretty amazing.
His ability in the pocket is incredible. But then you saw, I think there was like a post-game interview where it was he, Bobby Wagner, and Terry McLaurin. And you can see the reverence and respect, which is just unheard of for a rookie, that both Bobby Wagner and Terry McLaurin have for Jaden Daniels. He carries himself in such a way that he has gained the respect of this locker room, and they play hard for him. I love that there's a lot more stories coming out about Dan Quinn and how he's really just shaped and molded the culture from day one there in Washington. And Jaden Daniels has been, the lead dog in that, if you will. And yeah, his play on the field has reflected that as well. There's a drop off, which I think we can now attest to the rib injury that he had, where his throws are a little off. His running wasn't as dynamic, but between he and Cliff Kingsbury, they have kind of rebounded, and they're playing really, really good football, opportunistic football. They're really good on short yardage and third and fourth down. You saw that incredible little boot that he ran that probably should have been a tackle for loss, but he stiff arms a D lineman, and you're like, those are the types of things that we need a guy like Jaden Daniels to make to win games. Go take it, go do it. And so he's got the mentality. You can see he's fearless, and he's not making the big mistake that a rookie does. He does not operate like a rookie does.
No, he doesn't, and that's why they're moving on and why the Washington Commanders now have their first playoff win since 2006. Marshall, we got 5 teams that are on their way home with a 6th on their way tonight as well. Among the Packers, the Buccaneers, the Broncos, the Steelers, and the Chargers, which team that lost this weekend should feel the best about their season and what's coming in the future?
I said this already, but I like the Broncos right now. They are shedding dead cat money of Russell Wilson. They feel like they have a guy in Bo Nix that Sean Payton believes in and can scheme around. Their defense was dynamic most of the season. They've got some pieces that are doable that they can plug in via free agency or the draft and developing guys. They're right there. And so I like Denver moving forward. They need a couple of pieces on offense for some dynamism and explosion, and some matching pieces to give you. You've got the cover corner, the lockdown corner. You've got a developmental guy in Riley Moss. You just need a few more pieces around it, but they're set up to succeed moving forward.
So one more team going home tonight, one more team moving on. Minnesota and the Rams play in Glendale, Arizona. The winner will go to Philly next Sunday. How do you see this one?
I think, listen, the Lions have shown us that, their culture is stronger than the injuries, and the places where they lack. They showed up in the big moments. They've got incredible coaches, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell. This is about what do we get out of Sam Darnold? Because Minnesota at times has looked like the best team in the NFC until they go head-to-head with Detroit. And so I'm looking for Sam Darnold. How does he respond to the massive amounts of pressure that Aaron Glenn and Detroit brought last time? There were guys open. He kind of panicked. They made the pocket really muddy. How does he respond? Can he deliver? This is no longer like a traditional home game. Not that the Rams had a loud, raucous environment at SoFi, but they're now, both teams are kind of away in Arizona. It's going to be a really weird atmosphere, still playoff atmosphere, but I think this game's about what Sam Darnold does. I think the Lions are primed. I think this is their moment. They believe in it. They understand what's at stake. And they play to that level. Whoever is up there, they've shown us already. They'll play to that level. So I think the Lions tonight.
So it's going to be an interesting game tonight for all the reasons that you mentioned sitting and surrounding this one. It's such an adverse set of circumstances here, but still going to be an incredible game. I didn't see the line on this one right now. I think it had been pretty static even with the move to Glendale between the two teams. Yeah, right now the Rams sitting here as a 2.5-point dog to Minnesota, which you'd expect in this spot given everything that's gone on and given the trajectory of these seasons. So going to be a fascinating game. Check out all of the previewing for that coming up in the pregame power-up. Marshall Newhouse along with Trey Wingo, Claudia Bellafato, Emerson Lazia continuing to jump through tables as well. Marshall, always appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So, Dad, this one is going to be interesting here. And I think what Marshall talked about with the Lions going up against the Vikings and what we saw from that blitz package from Aaron Glenn, going to be interesting because the Rams have gotten plenty of pressure on opposing teams. Jared Verse in that defensive front, it's been well documented how special they've been here. And you wonder if we see an uptick now in blitzes thrown at Sam Darnold, who has been good against the blitz in the majority of this season, but also hasn't seen a high volume of it here. This is not a Vikings team that's been blitzed often outside of that. And so I wonder if they look at some of that game plan from Aaron Glenn and say, hey, maybe this is a sample size issue and we can still bother Sam Darnold and knock off what can be a prolific passing game with all the weapons he's got.
Yeah, we know Minnesota can score score points. Obviously, they stumbled against Detroit a couple of times, but the Rams in scoring, when they have everybody healthy, it's been surprising. You go back a few weeks, they put up 12 points in a win over the 49ers, 19 points in a win over the Jets, 13 points in a win over the Cardinals. They did put up 25 in a loss to the Seahawks in Week 18. But the offense for the Rams just hasn't been generating the points that you think would go along with the weapons they have on offense. That's what's been a surprising thing to me. To say that the Rams with this offense can't keep up with the Minnesota offense would seem weird to say, but they've struggled scoring points.
Yeah, it really is going to be about, hey, you always know you can step on the landmine with the Rams based on what we saw with the offensive output against the Bills. But as we pointed out, and everyone did after that game, everything went right for them, and they hit all of these critical plays here. Can they replicate that now when it matters most? That remains to be seen coming up tonight. We'll look at the future of Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Apparently, call and response here, as we mentioned, coming off Wild Card Weekend in the NFL, that plenty of teachers would probably be taking advantage of the visual of A.J. Brown reading on the sideline. Again, the Eagles star wide receiver, was caught reading excerpts from Inner Excellence, a mental skills book, on the sideline as he uses it, as he said, to reset in between series. He's always enjoyed reading. He likes it as a way to try and calm himself and reset going into every drive. Miss Hurwitz sent the meme in to one of our producers here on the show. Now, apparently this is school in 2025. They've got a meme of the week spot on their whiteboard in class. So we're doing analog memes in school, which is just perfect for my brain. And the meme is the picture of A.J. Brown with the caption, "Me trying to get my 60 minutes of reading in for Miss Hurwitz's homework." So, Dad, teachers always ready to go to try and find some motivation. As I'd imagine now more than ever, it's harder to get. I mean, it was hard to get us to read as kids. I feel like every teacher since the dawn of time has been fighting that battle to try and get their kids to read, because I always said, if you gave me the opportunity now to go back and be assigned all the books I was supposed to read at school, it'd be awesome to have the time to check out all of that and to learn all that. But you don't want to do it when you're a kid, and so this is a weapon that they can use, and Miss Hurwitz clearly already making an example of that.
Oh, yeah. The worst at reading the book was the summer reading project, where you had to read a couple of books and write a report on it. When you just wanted to, you had time off in the summer. You're like, are you serious? I got to read a book. I mean, as a kid, where you want to go out and play, it's like, you got to be kidding me. But we are in different times. Mike, I'm still amazed. It's not like Philadelphia is not on national TV a lot, right? And A.J. Brown said he brings the book in the sideline all the time. I'm stunned that it took the first playoff game of the year to see that. Does he really bring it on the sideline every game and read from it? I find that really amazing. It's so out of place to, with the iPad studying the plays in between series, to have someone actually open a book on the sidelines. But he said he does it every game, and he said he just goes for that inspirational quote and then puts it down. But I'm stunned it has taken us this long, or the TV broadcasts this long, to notice that.
Yeah, if I know the people at Reddit like I think I do, they're going to go over this entire season for the Eagles like it's the Zapruder film and find if there's any other instance of this book being on the sideline, they are going to find it and make that true for us. So I have full belief in there, because I'm with you. And A.J. Brown, he's one of the stars. We've talked about this Eagles passing game and receiving core ad nauseum during the portion of the season where we actually had some controversy around an Eagles team that has otherwise been very good. So I'm with you. A bit surprising there that it's taken this long to see that actually manifest on the sideline, if that's something he really has been doing. So we will wait and see there. But these are the kind of things you get to laugh about on a Monday morning when your team in the Philadelphia Eagles went out there and took care of business against the Green Bay Packers. Dad, on the other side of Pennsylvania football here, not quite as much sunshine and laughter for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their team coming off another loss in the postseason now. Yet another failure by Mike Tomlin and this team to go out here and win. And Dad, you called this game, and I'd be curious the frustration that you felt around this team, around this fan base, over a group where we know, hey, Mike Tomlin is one of the most respected coaches in the business. We know he navigated this quarterback situation in the middle of the year better than most would have, and got to sort of wag his finger at all of us then. But there seems to really be a ceiling right now on this team in an AFC where, unless you've got a future Hall of Famer at quarterback, you need not apply for postseason wins. And so what do you do, Dad, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers going forward? Is Mike Tomlin's job really in question, or is there something else to be done with this roster?
It just feels like Mike Tomlin he's synonymous with Pittsburgh. I mean, and Pittsburgh, the stability of that coaching staff, again, for those that may have forgotten, since the 70s, there have bbeen three coaches, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. It's the most stable head coaching organization in the NFL by far. And so it just seems a natural occurrence that Mike Tomlin is going to be back. But I remember Marty Schottenheimer, former head coach in the NFL, say that after like 10, 11, 12 years, he said, your voice kind of gets lost in the locker room. And every situation is different. This was Marty talking about what he felt from a head coach, that players were kind of looking through you, not at you anymore, and not paying as much attention to you, that it kind of got stale in the locker room. And I don't know if that's where we're at, because, you talk to Cam Hayward and he's like, I'm not concerned about Mike Tomlin's messaging. I'm concerned about our execution. Because at the end of the day, I talk about this all the time. There's game plans and then there's executing on the field. And it's up to the players to execute on the field. But more than a few times is a pattern. And we saw the pattern at the end of the season. We saw the pattern in the last 6 playoff games. We saw the pattern of not scoring in the first quarter. And you just wonder if it's time for a shakeup, if it's time for a younger, new head coach, which almost seems blasphemous. I mean, you just think of Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh and John Harbaugh in Baltimore, right? End of story. They've been there 18 and 17 years. You just think that's the norm. But there is change in everything. With other teams, there is change quicker. Obviously, we have seen that. With those two teams, that they're very, very stable in the head coaching situation. But you just wonder, I mean, for an organization that hasn't pulled the ripcord in so long, do you say, you know what? We have to stir this thing up a little bit, because they seem caught in that we're not the best in the league, we're not the worst in the league, we're in that horrible place of being mid-range. So it's a mid-range draft pick every year. Free agency, it's who do you pick up? They're not set at the quarterback position by any stretch of the imagination. So they have some rebuilding and restructuring to do.
5 straight losses to end the season, 2 of them against the Ravens, 6 straight playoff losses, as you mentioned. And, Dad, I don't think firing Mike Tomlin's going to do anything for you here. The Pittsburgh Steelers are paying for their mismanagement of the end of Ben Roethlisberger's tenure in Pittsburgh, where they forsake the feelings of a Pittsburgh legend and held those up over meaningfully planning for the quarterback position going forward. And Mike Tomlin, who I'm sure is part of the evaluation for the way they draft things, given his respect and tenure around there, is going to deserve some of the blame along with the rest of that franchise for drafting Kenny Pickett as the heir apparent and failing on that front here. That's the problem, Dad. They don't have a quarterback. And in the AFC, this isn't the NFC, where you can go out here and bolster the rest of the roster, run the ball down people's throats, and structure your way through this. If you don't have a weapon of mass destruction at quarterback here, you're going to have a bad time. And they're staring up at Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow in this division, wondering what the hell they're going to do. It's no surprise that them and the Browns, 2 teams devoid of quarterback productions, are the ones that are wearing egg on their face here. Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers and his impact are the reason they're in position to be even the playoffs to begin with. Looking at the rest of this roster and finding a way to coach them through to have that stability and create the expectation that allows them to go out and succeed consistently. But until they do some soul searching on the quarterback position and stop bargain shopping here in a side of football where you've got to go and have caviar taste, this is going to continue to be the result for them. And I know that's got to be maddening for Pittsburgh Steelers fans. So in my mind, like, listen, it sounds like they're not going to part ways with Mike Tomlin again, which is the right move here. But if you're a Steelers fan that's grown tired of that going forward here, he's not your problem, although his involvement in the quarterback situation, along with everyone else who has a hand in that in the building, is the problem for the Steelers and will be for the foreseeable future, because there doesn't seem to be a viable answer this offseason.
No, since Ben Roethlisberger, you've had basically Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields since Ben. And you don't have your quarterback. You don't. And you mentioned between Baltimore and Cincinnati, those are 2 teams that can score points. You have to be able to score points. Now, Cincinnati's on the other side of being devoid of a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, you have to be able to score points. And that was the fear for Pittsburgh going into this game against Baltimore, that they couldn't keep up with Baltimore, even with a good defense that Pittsburgh has. So I agree. I don't think Tomlin is going anywhere, but they have to figure out this offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they'd be a team that would be real interesting, and obviously the Arthur Smith, a connection to this team, not this player necessarily. I wonder if there's someone that calls Kirk Cousins this offseason just to try and shake it up at that position, because you can't roll this team back out as presently constructed and expect Steelers fans to feel anything better going into next season if that's the case. All right, let's finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones to send you into the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Thank you to our guest that stopped by today, Marshall Newhouse from the Pregame Power-Up, as he always does on Monday to go over the NFL weekend. And LeBron James, Los Angeles Lakers superstar, for giving us some time as the Lakers get set to get back into action tonight here in Los Angeles. If you guys missed any of that, make sure you check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on the YouTube channel. As soon as we get done, Dad, let's start off with this. We mentioned the Pregame Power-Up, our brethren here on the DraftKings Network, and sister Claudia Bellafato, always getting things done in the lead up to some of these great games here. They were on this weekend, getting everyone ready for the Buffalo Bills to go out there and dispatch justice this weekend. And we know Bills Mafia is a huge part of the Buffalo experience there. And our buddy Emerson Latzia went out to Bills Mafia to try and ingratiate himself with the locals. I know he is married into a Buffalo Bills family, and so I figured they made you do this at the wedding, but Emerson Latzia finally got his first table jump through. Let's take a look and grade his effort on this front here in the Buffalo parking lots.
Higher?
Oh, God. He tried to short step it.
Holy crap. Okay, let's go. Here we go. One small step for man, one giant leap for Bills Mafia. Woo! Let's go!
Oh.
Let's go! Let's go!
Man, my biggest worry with this every time, Dad, remains the head potentially spiking off the concrete there. Because you saw it. He lands body on the table, does a good job, and they were all coaching him through it. He tried to go up on the first couple of steps, and everyone shouted him down that you got to get up to the top to get enough force to break this table. But I am always worried. So great core and neck strength by Emerson to be able to avoid smashing his head off the concrete and damaging his brain any further than college already did.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Bills Mafia, they make it look so professional, mainly because they have so much alcohol in them. But, I mean, they are jumping at unbelievable heights and just with total disregard for their bodies. For those that are just trying to be in the media and do it, they have more regard for their body, and they're a little more tense in doing this and not as loose as those in the Bills Mafia who do it. Because I'm with you. I worry about the head clanking off the deck. But I thought he did a good job. You know, he was made to go up higher. You could definitely tell he was nervous in doing it, which I would be as well, especially my 62-year-old body. I don't know how quickly I'd be able to get up from that. But I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, no, Dad, I would not advise that as your doctor, but certainly your son here. That might be the last jump that you ever make on planet Earth. So, Bills Mafia, we love you, but we ain't going through any table anytime soon here. I appreciate what Jason Kelsey did in that regard, and certainly 10 out of 10 for me with Emerson and his effort there. I'm sure his wife and her family all very, very proud of that. Less proud, Dad, as we get to that, of the kids that tried to trick Caleb Williams via text here. Apparently, a group of kids got a hold of Caleb Williams' phone number and actually pranked him as Ben Johnson, claiming to be the now offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, claiming that he got the head coaching job, and they even managed to get Caleb Williams on FaceTime. Take a look.
Oh, my God. You got it?
Yeah.
Hey, Caleb, it's me, Ben Johnson.
Come to the Dolphins, bro.
No, shut up. Hey, you're a great QB, but I'm so glad that you're going to get a new head coach. I don't know if it's Ben Johnson, but I'm sorry about this.
All good. Peace out.
Hey, the nails are tough.
You're a GOAT, bro. You're a GOAT.
No way.
Yeah!
What I love is how clearly unprepared for this to work that kid actually was. Because, Dad, you saw him leaking confidence halfway through the Ben Johnson impression here, then just devolved into praise, and then an apology for Caleb Williams in real time. So this is one of those moments where you always ask if a dog's chasing the mailman, what would they ever do if they actually caught it? We found out, and the answer was piss down their legs.
Oh, my God. I mean, just absolutely threw up all over themselves. Because if you didn't have enough time to read those texts, they text, obviously, Caleb first saying, hey, this is Ben Johnson. Just wanted to reach out ahead of time before it gets released to the media. I'll be taking the head coaching job. Very excited to work with you in the future and blah, blah. And while Caleb wasn't sure, he answered back, I'm definitely excited for the future. Let's get this blank going and turn it around and do what hasn't been done for years. So they got away with it with the text, and they were very bold with the text, but you're right. All of a sudden, it got face-to-face, and they just absolutely melted.
Yeah, this isn't quite as bad as when people prank call players during the draft, which would be punishable by law, to try and mess with someone on one of the most stressful days of their entire life. Caleb Williams, no doubt, I'm sure, sitting around wondering and waiting to see who his next head coach is going to be. And all the Ben Johnson ties to Chicago, even as he's in the midst of a run with the Lions, seem like it's going to be an easy handoff there. But Caleb Williams, at the very least, acquitted himself well in the response here. I think if you're a Bears fan, fired up to see Caleb Williams with the exact response that you would expect to the news if Ben Johnson eventually does this. You know what it'll make, Dad? The job of the Bears social media team, if and when Ben Johnson is named the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, their challenge is to somehow incorporate this into whatever introductory video they have for him. So we'll be fascinated to see what they've got in that regard. But, Dad, even more fascinated to see this as we've got in the third here. So the show Special Forces, World's Toughest Test, is one that takes celebrities all across, whether it is reality television, sports, or the like, and tries to put them through Special Forces military training to see how they would stack up against this. And on this most recent season, you actually have my former teammate in Golden Tate alongside Cam Newton, the former top overall pick and MVP in the NFL. And this clip of Cam Newton jumping into a helicopter, Dad, is a great reminder of what a different level of athlete this man has always been.
Yeah, that is, let me tell you, he is, for a former athlete, he has kept himself in incredible shape. He dresses uniquely, that's for sure. But you would think in the physical challenges of this, because this gets mental too. There's a physical part, and I think the part that gets so many of them is when they have to do things in water. They're just not used to, these celebs aren't used to doing things, holding their breath in water or being in water for a long period of time. But as far as strength is concerned, Cam still looks the part without question. And to be able to pull himself up off the helicopter runner there is pretty darn impressive. I know my shoulders would have popped out. I'd have ended up in the water just kind of flailing around.
I was going to say, man, it's just a great reminder. Like Cam Newton, outside of right now being one of the chief Notre Dame haters on First Take every day here. Cam, we got our eye on you, by the way, here. This has got to stop at some point.
Yeah.
But seeing him last year, I remember he walked through Radio Row at the Super Bowl last year, and just the sheer overwhelming size of this man. Like we saw Josh Allen around there, who's a terror now. Cam Newton is just still in a league of his own in terms of being a physical outlier amongst quarterbacks, and still the way he's kept himself. We saw all those people at that 7-on-7 tournament try and jump Cam Newton and think they were going to get over on one of those physically imposing NFL quarterbacks in history, and now you get a reminder here as the man jumped out of a boat onto a moving helicopter and pulled himself up into it in a way that just, again, like we get 1% of the 1% reminders from this population all the time in the NFL. But even his NFL brethren in Golden Tate was like, God, you're going to ask me to do that after this dude? Yes, someone else is going to have to come out here and help.
I mean, when he played 6'5", 245 and could throw and could run. I mean, just an absolute terror. And now, I mean, he has got to make all those other celebs just look like just small people. He just has to tower over them.
Well, they had Dwight Howard on this show. I remember one of the earlier seasons too, and it was the same way where two of the most physically impressive specimens we have seen in their respective sports went out there and put it on wax in a very different way and made their brethren very, very proud in that moment. We hope you're proud of us here each and every day on GoJo and Golic. If you are, download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Check us out here 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you then.